A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. As Jesus passed by, he saw a blind man from birth. He spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva and smeared the clay on his eyes and said to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. So he went and washed and came back able to see. His neighbors and those who had seen him earlier as a beggar said, "Isn't this the one who used to sit and beg?" Some said, "It is," but others said, "No, he just looks like him." He said, "I am." They brought the one who was once blind to the Pharisees. Now Jesus had made clay and opened his eyes on a Sabbath. So then the Pharisees also asked him how he was able to see. He said to them, "He put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and now I can see." So some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, because he does not keep the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a sinful man do such signs?" And there was a division among them. So they said to the blind man again, "What do you have to say about him, since he opened your eyes?" He said, "He is a prophet." They answered and said to him, "You were born totally in sin, and are you trying to teach us?" Then they threw him out. When Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, he found him and said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered and said, "Who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and the one speaking with you is he." He said, "I do believe, Lord." And he worshipped him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
The blind man in the Gospel was laboring under two forms of blindness. One was physical blindness, which he had from birth, and the second was a spiritual blindness. He really didn't have God in his life. And as we heard in the Gospel, then one day, a strange thing happened. Someone he didn't know walked up to him, smeared mud over his eyes, and then in a commanding voice said, "Go, wash in the pool of Siloam." It didn't make much sense to the blind man, but he said, "You know, what have I to lose?" So he went and did as Jesus had asked him, and to his utter amazement, he found that he could see for the very first time in his life. If the story ended there, it was an amazing story, but that's only part of the story. At the end of the day, a second miracle had taken place. He was cured of his spiritual blindness. We heard it in the end of the Gospel when Jesus said, "Who do you think I am?" And he was able to make this wonderful act of faith in Jesus. We're told he believed it so deeply, he worshipped Jesus right there on the spot. Now contrast that with the religious leaders who are part of this story. Now they were good people. They kept the law. They were very religious in their own right. But, unfortunately, they were blind and they didn't realize it. They thought there was only one way of worshiping God, their way. And if anybody was a little different, they were suspect to them. And so here they had the very Son of God among them doing wonderful things. And they were unable to believe in him because they were blind. It was arrogance on their part, no humility there. No such thing as we might be wrong. Maybe this is the Messiah. And the unfortunate part of it is, as a result, Jesus could do nothing for them. Because that's central to this gospel, that if Jesus is going to do something for us, we have to acknowledge deep within ourselves that we do need him and we need his healing. All of us, every one of us here, we're blind to one extent or another in our lives. For some, it's spiritual blindness. God has a plan for each one of us. He wants us to continue to grow in his life all through our earthly life. And let's be honest, sometimes we're not interested. Sometimes we turn our backs on him. We don't listen to him. We're too busy with a whole lot of other things that we think will make us happy. And we're missing out on the one thing, the one person who can truly make us happy. And we can be blind to that. We can also suffer from blindness in our everyday relationships. Sometimes in family life, sometimes at work, sometimes maybe even with friends. We sometimes maybe struggle in those relationships. Sometimes we judge and say, we're having problems. But it's not my problem, it's the other person's problem. And oftentimes, that's a form of blindness, where we can't see our own selves clearly. And we can't understand that we're the one who's putting a stumbling block in the way of a better relationship. Sometimes it's what we call moral blindness. You take an issue of morality. Abortion is one of the ones that comes easily to mind. How many different opinions are there out there? This is what I feel, and I know it's right, and I'm going to follow it. But there's only one right answer, and the only person who can give us that right answer is Jesus. Jesus Christ. But sometimes, again, arrogance and pride gets in the way. And so I would ask each of us, we're halfway through Lent, for the rest of Lent to do something that's really important. To ask Jesus Christ each day to help us to see the blind spots in our lives, and more importantly, to help us to see life, our relationships with God, our relationships with one another, to see them not just through our own eyes, but through the eyes of Jesus. We're going to have what we call the Second Scrutiny today with the members of the OCIA and their sponsors. This is an important part of their journey toward Easter, to be able to look a little more deeply into their lives and to be able to recognize the blind spots that are there and allow Jesus to come to them and to give them courage to acknowledge those areas, and then to ask Jesus for what he does best to bring them his healing and peace.